Hi guys. So I've been thinking a little bit about the concept of the dark goddess recently. It's been something that's come up for me a lot in my academic research over the masters, and it's definitely going to be following me into the PhD. And this is a concept that's kind of going to provide the basis, the context of my PhD research. It's a concept, it's a term that keeps popping up in my head when I'm thinking about the Morrigan, when I'm thinking about the goddess in neo-paganism in general, and what separates neo-paganism from maybe other forms of alternative spirituality, from Christianity, from other forms of what we consider to be religion in the West. I keep coming back to that concept of the dark goddess as being really central to that. For me, the term the dark goddess is separated from the concept of, say, the crone. I think some people see that kind of dark aspect coming in the very predominant maiden mother crone kind of triad in a lot of neo-paganism and Wicca. But to me, the dark goddess is actually something a little bit separate from that. The dark goddess to me is not actually just the crone, it's not synonymous with the crone. And although the maiden mother crone kind of triad really never spoke to me at all, it really never was something that I engaged with on a serious kind of level. The dark goddess definitely to me has followed me throughout my interactions with neo-paganism and Wicca, and I think once I started to get that understanding that there was this underbelly in this concept of the goddess and in these alternative spiritualities, that was what kind of sucked me in. And even though I think sometimes when I think of the goddess, that the first images that come to mind are those kind of more nurturing and beautiful and plentiful, bountiful kind of mother goddess, earth goddess images. Very early on, when I started to explore neo-paganism and witchcraft and Wicca, I did come across this concept of the dark goddess, associated with the crone, but also just as this sort of the flip side of nature, the dark half of the year. And at the end of the day, neo-paganism and Wicca and most of these spiritualities, but particularly if we're looking at paganism, as opposed to some other forms of goddess worship and some other kind of parts of the wider community, it really is differentiated by that kind of polarity, that focus on polarity, and that the focus on the light balanced with the dark, and the importance of incorporating that into a spiritual practice, that a religion that equates light with good and dark with evil, that it is in some way unbalanced. And that's definitely something that spoke to me a lot. But I think more than that, for me, I have always felt reverence more in association with that image of the dark goddess than with the light goddess. There's something very nice and celebratory about the more nurturing, abundant, creative figure than there is about the kind of darker figure. And I think maybe it's easier to kind of associate that figure with the cycles of the earth, and when we're looking at the seasons and the abundance of summer and the harvest of the autumn. But for me, when you start to really touch on true mystery and true awe, all of that really comes from that dark goddess concept, as vague as it is. There's a lot to be said about the concept of the dark goddess in relation to feminism and into specific concepts of differentiating paganism and these alternative spiritualities from Christianity by presenting a goddess that is allowed to be dark, that is allowed to be bonded to the earth, that is allowed to be all of these things that are sort of extricated from the image of the divine in Christianity. So there's a sort of a dual sort of feminism and maybe actually just a general push against what most of us see as being the dominant religious paradigm of the West. This sort of very patriarchal Christian whitewashed image that a lot of us have of what Christianity really is. In many regards, and this is definitely something I want to read more about, I'm sure there are people who have talked about the Black Madonna in this regard, the dark goddess in many regards is the ultimate other of the West. She is female, she is dark, and she may be understood to be dark in sort of binary dark light, ambiguous morals, or destructive rather than creative kind of aspect, but also maybe in terms of skin color and that kind of thing, which is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to get into right now. But there is this sense of deviance about the dark goddess. Whether or not we ascribe any sort of concept of evil to her, or whether or not we actually believe in evil, that's not really something that I bring into my spirituality. There definitely is this element of deviance to the dark goddess. She's definitely connected with something that is just a little bit scary, a little bit spooky. And I think that the feeling of awe and reverence attached to her, for me anyway, really starts to segue into the kinds of feelings that I have around just how much I enjoy thinking and watching and reading things that are veering into sort of horror genres, and thinking about the supernatural, and just things that kind of make your skin crawl, things that we don't understand and which kind of scare us a little bit. And there's kind of this murky grey area, I think, between a religious experience that can be associated with that feeling of pure awe and wonder and reverence and submission, and a feeling of fear and uncertainty, fear of the unknown, a certain kind of delicious creepiness that we actually tend to love to engage ourselves with, that we tend to embrace, that, I don't know, for some reason humans seem to enjoy exploring. So at the end of the day, I kind of wonder if the dark goddess isn't actually a sort of a feeling, an experience, more than a figure or a concept, if that makes sense. And this feeling or experience is kind of best symbolized by a figure who can be described as the other of Western society. This female figure, dark figure, who is basically a deviant. So if you kind of see it in that way, the dark goddess can become a figure of empowerment, and a very freeing concept, and especially when associated with religion, with spirituality, with something that we kind of traditionally associate with order, with following social norms. When we think about religion in our society, we think about Christianity and traditional religions, and the old order of being and knowing, and orders of power, like structures of power. So sorry that this was a bit disjointed and my battery kept dying, but I hope you got the gist of what I was kind of trying to start touching on. And this is definitely a subject that I'm going to want to come back to again when I've sorted out my thoughts a bit more, and maybe think and talk a little bit more about how it intersects with my own spirituality and my own concepts of divinity and that kind of thing. So I hope you're all well. I hope I'll be making another video again sooner than the last one, and I'll talk to you soon.